Hey guys, it's Salad again, and I kind of want to talk about my crash out that I'm about to have here because I feel like the Yu-Gi-Oh community isn't hammering this home enough to Konami that the tins are not serving their original intended purpose, which is to drive down the price of certain staples and cards that had been basically unaffordable for people in general. Now, I've got a list here of the card pool for the tins throughout the last 4 years, including this one. And you're going to be shocked to hear what I'm about to say because we have gone from in 2022 the card pool being 277 cards, which is still quite a bit, but in further context, as I'm going to go through the last 4 years and the individual cards themselves within this pool, you're going to see how bad it's gotten. We have in 2022 277 cards. In 2023, they only added 6 cards to the pool, which made it 283 cards total. That's not bad. When we get to 2024, they shot up almost to 400 cards in the pool. They doubled, or not, they didn't double, but they added like almost an additional 100 cards. Okay, that's ridiculous. I don't care what anybody says, that's ridiculous. All it does is inflate the card pool to where certain things just become harder to pull. And then did they course correct this? No, they didn't course correct at all because in 2025, which is like right now, 450 card pool. Why? Who asked for this? And then let's take a look at the individual years. So 2022, we're going to scroll all the way up here. You'll see 277 cards released the 14th of September in 2022. And you're going to look at the various reprints. So we're starting at rares. You have Fluanderies is in here. Despia is in here because those were really relevant decks at the time. You see like important staples such as Nibiru, Dark Ruler No More, Adagnister reprints were in here because that was a tier 2 deck at one point. Scrap Raptor got a reprint here because dinos were still kind of roguish by this time period. You have Traptrix reprints in here. Ghost Reaper Winter Cherry, Spooky Dogwood, Mourner. You had DPE was in here because that was a really important reprint that needed to happen because the deck was, or not the deck, but the card was rather expensive because of Verte Anaconda not being hit yet, I think. And even if it was hit, Hero needed a reprint of this card. Pot of Prosperity because the card was hella expensive at the time. Droplet also put the cost of this card down into the floor. Small World. You had Ash, Bell, Ogre. What else is in here? You had just so much like good reprints. Even B Troopers got reprints in here, which is kind of whatever. So you look at all this and you even see I guess a spare rocket reprint here and there, but it's not anything crazy. But the card pool is relatively small, and whatever's higher rarity was easy to get, even if you only bought singles. Now we go up to 2023. Now we go up 6 cards, but there's still some good reprints in here. You have Runic, Exosister, more branded stuff got reprints in here. You have some Therion reprints. Salesban was a card that was put in here. Adventurer token stuff. Kashtiras finally got their reprints in here. You had Garura as a reprint, I know was important because that card was getting up there. DDD was another one. Psychic and Punisher got a print in here. Blazing Cartesia was a godsend for this year. And then what else do we have? Pretty much that's it. Sure, you got like a spare Gem Knight card here and there. Libromancer, Scareclaw. It's a little bit worse, but it's a decent tin. It wasn't terrible, but it didn't have the same like staples that 2022 had. 2022 was pretty stacked, all things considered. And then we go to 2024. And this tin had some stinkers in it. I don't know what they were thinking in terms of this card pool, because they just inflated it. Now, sure, you got some good reprints here and there, such as Gen. You had Gold Pride stuff in here. Infernoble had some stuff in here. The Pearly stuff got reprints. There was Chimera stuff in here. Just, it was big, and it had a lot of things, but because the card pool had basically gone up so much, pulling things that you absolutely needed through sealed product was just basically impossible for the most part. You had to get pretty lucky. But you had Mannadium stuff in here, which is really funny because Mannadium has not been talked about in years. Fighting Flame Swordsman, you had the Nightmare Magician, Snake Eyes got their reprint, Vanquish Soul got some key reprints in here, which was nice. Heroes got some stuff. Unchained was another deck that got some things. Like, you just see even the value of certain cards in here, especially the Vanquish Soul stuff, they shot up. Chaos Angel got a reprint in here. So it's not like everything was bad in this tin. It's just that the card pool was pretty inflated. And I will mention, 50 of these cards were quarter centuries in the set. So let's take a look at the previous year. So 2023. Did they even do Starlights? Okay, no, I don't think they did Starlights. So this tin here was the first one where they did it. And they added an additional 50 cards. So even without those 50 cards, keep in mind, 398 is still 348. We added an additional 70 cards to the pool, which is still pretty high. But now you get to 2025, and I know this is a different website, but bear with me here. We get up to 450 cards. And not all of these are created equal, okay? Because you look at something like Infinite Impermanence here. I'm assuming this is like in a Starlight version, and it's like 20 euros, which is insane. But you even go down to SP, I'm assuming that's a quarter century. Black Goat Laughs at $10, not bad considering it was at 30. But let's see if I can find Perulia. Perulia is still 33 euros, so I'd imagine that translates to it's still expensive. Dominus Purge, still 30 euros. Fuelos, 15 euros. Seriously? This card was $15 here in the States. And I guess with the reprint, it's still going to be $15. Cool. Dominus Impulse, 28 euros. Probably still around 30 for those, which defeats the purpose of having the tins, make things accessible to players. What else is in here? Like, just so much stuff is in here. This is ridiculous. And a good portion of this also is quarter centuries, or Starlights, or whatever it is that they're choosing to say these days, because there's virtually no difference between them. The point remains the same. What is Konami doing? Do they want players to play the game? Because if the answer is yes, they need to be able to have players who can afford the damn cards. Okay? And I understand Yu-Gi-Oh! Has never been considered a quote-unquote budget-friendly game, but they had this push to make the game more affordable over the years, especially whenever Master Duel popped off, which is when I started coming back into the game. And this is when, you know, people were clamoring trying to get back into the game and invest into decks that staples are too expensive. Why am I paying $30 for a common Ash Blossom in the Soul Burner deck just to be able to compete and go like X4 at locals? You know, it was stuff like that that people were getting mad over. And slowly but surely, Konami managed to course correct. And as you saw in like the previous site that I showed you for 2022, ashes are down to $5 now. It's relatively easy to get a lot of staples pretty cheap. So why are they not doing that for the Mulcharmies? Okay, I understand that they want to get more reprints in so that they can make money, but at the same time, nobody wants to buy these products because if you're buying it sealed, you basically have no guaranteed chance of pulling anything that you want, and then when you're buying singles, you're defeating the purpose of buying singles because with how hard it is to pull anything, the prices are not really going to change all that much. So now we're in a catch-22 where the game is still not that affordable. At least if you're trying to keep up with the most competitive trends. Okay, if you need Dominus Impulses, they're still like $90 a playset as of right now. If you need to get things like Dominus Purge, that's still pretty up there. Perulias, forget it, you're better off getting the Fualoses for $45 a playset. And this isn't to say that I want the game to be so inexpensive that Konami doesn't make money. What I want for them is to make a good business decision that incentivizes people to buy sealed. This has been a problem for years at this point. We have had many sets where they are extremely top heavy and there's a bunch of filler that nobody wants. You know, when Little Knight came out in the TCG, that was like the only value card in that set, for the most part. And now, with Justice Hunters that has released, there's 3 archetypes where you actually could make a decent amount of money back off of a box. You couldn't break even off of just one box, but hey, you could at least, trade for things that you didn't want. Like if you pulled some Yummy cards and you're trying to build a Draco Tail deck, you could, side off whatever Yummy stuff somebody else wanted, and if they happen to pull Draco Tail cards, hey, cool, you can do that. It's like Justice Hunters has been the one set that I've seen in a while where people just want to open it and then trade continuously with one another. The last time I saw that was like Crossover Breakers. And even then, Crossover Breakers only had Ryzeal and Malice. Those are like the 2 major decks. Whereas this, last set, Justice Hunters, had 3 that were really impactful, meta warping, and were easily accessible for the most part. They're fairly cheap, all things considered. I mean, Azunas are still around $30, but if you want to play a budget version of any Canine variant, you just play it at 1. Right? Fimenas are still around $15 last I saw. And Draco Tail is arguably the most expensive out of all of them just because it has the most ultras, but even Yummy is relatively inexpensive considering what other decks used to go for, or entire, singular cards would, retail at. So, I don't know, man. I think Konami just needs to downsize the tins. I think they need to actually just listen to the community for once. Okay, for once. Because if they're not going to listen about how products should be handled, okay, let them screw it up. Let them not make their money because people are not going to buy these tins. Don't incentivize them to, keep having this as a precedent. If you don't buy this stuff, they will have to change it. That's just the bottom line. And maybe if they get humbled enough, they'll cooperate. But with that being said, I don't have faith in this community, honestly, to actually stand up for itself. This is it's like dealing with the gaming industry fans or whatever, because they don't stick up for themselves whenever, Call of Duty releases things over and over and over again, and what they're re-releasing is basically just an expansion update that could have been done through your internet connection. Like, you didn't have to go out and buy a $70 game. But because the numbers are up, Activision doesn't feel the need to change course. right? Because there's no other competition in town until this year with Battlefield 6. That's kind of like what's happening with Konami. They think that they have no competition, but the truth is, between the time rule changes, the tins being as inflated as they are, the game is still not being affordable for certain like play sets of cards. People are looking to other card games right now, man. People are looking at One Piece, they're looking at Gundam, they're looking at all of these other games that are in town. Okay, this isn't 2005 where Konami is like one of 4 companies in town, right? And I would argue that if you're playing something like One Piece, that might be a better investment depending on who you are, right? If you're somebody who likes to splurge on sets and pull some high value cards, One Piece kind of does it better, okay? And I can admit that. Decks are also a lot cheaper because there's not as much demand for a lot of low rarity stuff. And that's another thing. When One Piece releases their stuff, and I'm going to go off on a tangent here because this is how they should do it here in the States. They print various rarities of the same card within a set. It's kind of like what Final Fantasy even did, where the Final Fantasy TCG would have a normal looking card, they would have a foil version of certain cards, or most cards rather, and then they would have particular cards within the set would be just full arts. So they would be borderless, they would look really pretty and everything else, but Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't do that unless it's in the OCG. Why they don't do this in the TCG, I don't know, because this would be the best of both worlds for budget players and players who want to spend a little bit more money on the game. Because again, if we're trying to incentivize people to buy sealed, the best way to do it is to have the multiple rarity system that exists in the OCG. Why they don't do this, I don't know, but Konami would basically get more money out of people if they just sweetened the pot a lot more. But with that being said, my name is Sillet. I'm done talking about this. I'm going to move on to some other things that I've got cooking on in the background. Cheers. Hey guys, Editor Sillet here, and yeah, look at this shit. You look at the top row, $42 for Perulia, $30 for Purge, $33 for Impulse, $17 for Fualos. Lordly Loads, I mean, those are fine. Track, Black Goat Laughs are fine, but everything else is literally not breaking $5. So this tells me one of two things. The fucking short prints came back. And I'm still gonna crash out over this because this is stupid. Why are they doing this at this point? It really feels as if Konami just does not value the player base's budget. And this is not a problem that other card games have. You play One Piece, they print things in multiple rarities, and sometimes they do alt arts in the same set, which means that if you want to splurge a little bit, hey, that's fine, but you still have the affordable version of the card. Whereas this fucking game, Perulias have been reprinted twice now, and they're still not below $40. Not even Droplet had this fucking problem. Do better, Konami. Genuinely.